Is perfectionism a useful and valuable trait of my personality, or is it something that stands in my way? Among high achievers, this is a more common struggle than you might think. Welcome to Frank's Diana Explains. I am a professor at the University of Cambridge, which is a place full of extremely clever and competitive people. What made me film this video was a conversation I had last week with one of my students, followed a few days later by a similar one with another student, and I thought there's probably something in there that might interest a wider audience. All high achievers have some perfectionism in them, this drive not just to do the work but to do it in the best possible way. And that's what gives us pride and satisfaction, that's what makes us go the extra mile. And it's wonderful, it's a powerful motivator, and it's why great things get done, perfectionism. Trouble is, making something perfect takes time, and time is what we usually don't have enough of. When you're a high achiever, there are always more things to do than available time to do them in. You're always running behind, even if you work 10 or 12 or 20-hour days, and it gets quite stressful. So, okay, you read up as much as you can about productivity in the hope that you will learn how to stay focused and do more work in less time. But it never works. No matter how faster you become, there's always more work that piles up. The to-do list is bottomless, and there's never a day that you can go to bed thinking I've done everything. At last, there's really nothing left for me to do. And it took me many years to understand this, but the truth is that we will never be able to do everything that is on our to-do list. I used to stay at work very long hours in the hope of crossing out all the items of my to-do list. But no matter how late I stayed and how hard I worked, I still wasn't able to finish all the things I was supposed to do. Well, now I have a child, and at 5:30 I stop work and I pick her up from school and then go home with her, have dinner, shower, learn to read and write, a bit of mathematics, and watch old Pink Panther cartoons that she likes, read her story in bed and so forth. And I can no longer extend the workday indefinitely. So I have finally come to accept that there are a bunch of things on my list that will never get done. And the only sensible thing for me to do is to ensure that in the finite few hours of my workday, I actually do the things that matter most, not the ones that demand my attention most insistently. If you're an emergency room doctor, for example, and there are 50 patients waiting to be seen, you shouldn't deal with them in the order they came in, nor in the order of who screams the loudest. You must first treat the patient who is suffering from the most dangerous condition. Deal with the most important stuff first. And I can't believe how many years it took me to truly understand and internalize the axiom that I will never be able to finish everything, which is pretty obvious when I say it like that. And this means that the order in which I tackle things is crucially important, because ultimately the things I put off will never get done. You think you might get to them later, but by the time you do, the deadline has expired and they are no longer relevant. You basically missed the plane. A corollary of that is that if you're doing a certain task and you want to make it perfect before moving on to the next task and the one after that, then this naive perfectionist strategy may end up not leaving you enough time to finish the other tasks. And you have to figure out whether having completed the first task to perfection compensates for having dropped the other ones on the floor. Usually not. Usually, it's much better to have finished all tasks, all important tasks to some decent standard, than to have done some of them perfectly, but some other important tasks not at all. And so the message to my perfectionist self and to my perfectionist students is allocate some sensible amount of time to finish this important task, but then stick to it. Okay? Make a promise to yourself, signed in blood, that you'll give yourself until Thursday to do it, but after that it's over. Time out. You're not allowed to spill into Friday. On Friday, you must do another thing. Even though this promise is only to yourself, treat it as seriously as if you had your most important meeting on Friday with someone else. If your prototype isn't working by Thursday, then on Friday morning, you won't be able to impress your corporate client with it. And the billion-dollar deal for your startup won't get signed. And it's better to get something working on time, even if it's not perfect, than to aim for something perfect, but get to the meeting without anything working and be supremely embarrassed. Now, perfectionism in itself is good. It means you care deeply about what you do. You want to make it great. It's a virtue that not everyone has. Some people just don't care. But it's a bit like a wild horse that needs to be reined in. Harness the creativity and power of your perfectionism, but give it limits. Learn to time box it. Otherwise, it will expand like a gas to fill up all the time available. Steve Jobs, in 1983, while Apple was still the underdog in an industry, a computer industry dominated by much bigger players like IBM, famously said, "Real artists ship." He called his engineers artists because they were building a thing of beauty and they were damn proud of it. And of course, they wanted to make it the best possible. But he was telling them, you're not a real artist until you actually ship the damn product. If you keep tinkering with it forever instead of releasing it, then it will be irrelevant and it will never have any impact on the world. Of course, he also set rather arbitrary and unrealistic deadlines on his stuff, but that's another story altogether. When I started this YouTube channel, I watched a bunch of videos about making YouTube videos, and one of them urged viewers to get going even if they had reservations. Don't worry that your video still has flaws, it will anyway, and your first few videos will suck no matter what you do. But you must get started. So this guy said, punch perfectionism in the face. And I thought that was brilliant, and it really hit the nail on the head. So that's my advice to my exceedingly clever but exceedingly perfectionistic students, and also to myself. Do it at good enough level first. Feel free to keep improving it until you use up your allocated time, but then have the guts to draw a line under it and ship it and move on. Otherwise, you will end up getting nothing done. My students said this is something they needed to hear at this time. Is this something that resonates with you as well? Have you also suffered from perfectionism paralysis? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for staying till the end, and say wild horses to signal that you did. And I made several more videos on time management, if that's your thing.